Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Ensign from August 1982. And this article is entitled Russell M. Nelson, A Study in Obedience. So I wasn't sure if people were waiting for a video on Russell M. Nelson, because technically I should have done him when I was working on the first presidency. However, I don't do people who are still alive in general. I just don't. So at that time, he was still alive. It wasn't that long ago when he passed away. But I decided then to put him in the place where he otherwise would have been, in the Quorum of the 12. Yeah, so this is where he belongs, after Neal A. Maxwell and before M. Russell Ballard. I would say before Dallin H. Oaks, but Dallin H. Oaks is still alive, at least at the time of recording. I don't know how long his life will be, so I cannot predict that, so we are not going to speculate. I will do a video on him after he passes away, and not before. And I don't know how long that will be. It might take me 10 years to get to it. Who knows? I can't see the future. So what do I know about Russell M. Nelson? I think most people know a decent amount about him at this point. So first of all, he was a doctor. He was a heart surgeon, and he pioneered using a heart-lung bypass machine, which of course had a lot of fatalities at the beginning. So he had to, very unfortunately, watch a lot of his patients not make it through their procedures or surgeries. And but he kept trying, and he kept, I have heard a story of how devastated he was at one point, because there were 3 children in the same family with the same heart defect that all passed away on the table, or shortly thereafter, and the surgery table. And I feel like, and how devastated he was, and how he didn't want to continue. He didn't want to keep trying. And eventually his wife, Dancel, convinced him. Speaking of his wife, Dancel was his wife's name. I don't know her maiden name. And she was the mother of his 10 children, 9 of which are girls. So yeah, I know a handful of stuff about him. Another thing is that as a heart surgeon, he operated on Spencer W. Kimball. No kidding. And I believe he was colleagues with Gary E. Stevenson, who is also a member of the Quorum of the 12. Also, one thing that I think very few people know is that in the 70s, he was Sunday School General President. That was his first general authority calling. He was General Sunday School President, and then I believe from there he was released and then later called to the Quorum of the 12. So it's not like he didn't have any experience before that. Also, that I don't think that many people realize that his first talk given in conference was given not even as Sunday School General President. It was given as stake president of, I forget which stake, Bonneville, something like that. I'll have to look it up for sure. But it's actually, it's up on my website. It was in 1968. Yeah. So it was the first time he spoke in conference. So yeah, he's been around a long time. And I think it's really interesting that so few people actually know that much about that part. And so I am interested in diving deeper, because I feel like there's a lot of details about his life that we are familiar with. And so I decided to choose an article that's relatively complete for the time it was written, yeah, in 1982. And then we will look at the Wikipedia article to fill in any gaps, because he became president of the church in 2018, and then he passed away in 2025, shortly after his 101st birthday. No kidding, if you didn't know that. I do know that he didn't have any major health concerns that I'm aware of until he was in his late 90s. I think he was 99 when he broke his back, and had to, after a fall, and he had to sit in a wheelchair for a while, but he was able to walk again afterwards, which is amazing for a 100-year-old. Yeah, it did take him a while, but he did recover, and and so eventually his wife Dancel passed away, and I do remember when that happened. He spoke about it in conference. I don't remember the exact year. I want to say 2003, something like that. And then a year or two later, I think it was 2 years later, he married his wife, his current wife, his widow, Wendy. Yeah. So, who was quite a bit younger than him, but considering that he got married at like 85, I mean, it's not that surprising, like, and when you're 85 and you're looking for, a partner, the chances of finding one your age is pretty low, is it not? I'm just saying, maybe I'm wrong, but that was just my impression. But at the end of the day, it's their decision, and, but like, anyway, that's like how much I know about his life up to now. I have also heard a story from Wendy where she mentioned that he is very energetic and that he still tries to do a lot of stuff on his own, and he doesn't like putting things off until tomorrow. If they can be done today, let's get up and do it. Let's do it right now. Yeah, that's the kind of person he is. I also really, really appreciated that the church had a president of the church who was a doctor during the pandemic. That was amazing. He was very cautious and tried to follow all of the CDC recommendations, and for the size of gatherings and wearing masks and things like that, and encouraged everyone to follow the rules of their local leaders. So, which I think is very admirable, and not everyone was a big fan of at the time. I remember that. But I really liked that coming from the leaders of the church, and they set the example for that. That conference itself was remote. The only people in the building were people who absolutely had to be there. They were all wearing masks unless they were speaking. And, it was really impressive with how well organized that was. They didn't have any singing. They played recordings of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Things like that. For like 3 or 4 different conferences during the pandemic. So I think that was also inspired, that we needed, somebody with a medical background leading the church at that time. So anyways, let's get on to the article. Let's see how much I didn't know. Yeah. And I'll be interested to see how much I will be able to learn from this article. All right. Russell M. Nelson, A Study in Obedience. There's a little blurb at the beginning. It says, "My philosophy is to stop putting question marks behind the prophet's statements and put exclamation points instead." I like that. Remember, this is written before he was president of the church, so they're not talking about themselves. Also, the author is by Lane Johnson, assistant editor. I don't know who that is, and I'm not sure if there's any significance there, so... All right. On the operating table, under a bright light and surrounded by a jungle of glittering equipment, is a 60-year-old man, being covered with special green drapes that leave a long rectangular opening squarely over the middle of his chest and another opening over his left leg. Oh, they're taking a graft. Doing a bypass, sounds like. Dr. Russell M. Nelson joins 7 other members of the surgical team in the room: the senior's resident in surgery, a surgical nurse, an anesthesiologist, a heart-lung machine specialist, a computer specialist, and 2 other nurses, one of whom is in charge of the operating room. I stand slightly apart from them, an observer, scrubbed and wearing sanitized clothing. Wow, so Lane Johnson was there? That's interesting. Having taken their positions, they begin their work with an alacrity that is somewhat chilling to a newcomer. The senior resident, in one deft stroke, makes a foot-long incision, the length of the sternum, following quickly with a cauterizing tool that seals off the numerous small vessels that have begun to bleed into the wound. Meanwhile, Dr. Nelson is making an incision in the left leg to locate a vein that will be removed. This is to be a quadruple coronary arterial bypass operation, called it. In other words, surgery to bypass obstructions in 4 arteries that feed the patient's heart muscle. The vein being taken from the thigh will be used for the bypass grafts. Yeah, that's how they do it. There is a snipping of scissors and more cauterizing. I make an unscheduled exit to the hallway for a breath of fresh air and a reassessment of my determination to continue with this assignment. A little squeamish, are you? You're the one who wanted to sit on heart surgery. Like, that's a major one. That's a big one. Come on. Sheesh. Then comes the whirring sound of an electric saw. Re-entering the room, I am stationed at the head of the operating table, where in full view before me, I see that the patient's sternum has been sawed through longitudinally, and an ingenious retractor has been placed in the cleft. Several cranks on the short level spread the retractor apart, and there, between the patient's spread ribs, is his beating heart. Yeah, you kind of need that, you know? Soft music is playing quietly over the intercom. The surgeon's eyes reveal no amazement, no sense of drama, only deliberate concentration. Well, of course not. Like, they trained for this. Duh. I don't know. Like saying there's no drama. Of course not. Like, this sounds like a fairly routine operation. I mean, maybe not perfectly routine. Everybody's different, but like, I mean, for a heart surgeon, a quadruple bypass? Well, yeah, they do that all the time. I don't understand. Like, there's no amazement. Of course not. My weak in the knees feeling soon leaves, and the procedure takes on a magnetic fascination. An incision is carefully made into the aorta and one of the chambers of the heart, which continues to beat. Long sutures are prepared, tubes coming from the heart-lung machine. The pump are inserted into the incisions, and at a given signal, the heart-lung machine whirs into action. Interesting. Really? I didn't know that you had to stop the heart in order to do a bypass. Is that true? Well, I'm just saying, like, it could have just been in this case, but, like, I guess makes sense, but, like, I hadn't really thought about it, I guess. Yeah, see, this is something I don't do, generally. Now the dark venous blood entering the heart is intercepted and routed through the heart-lung machine, which oxygenates it and returns it, now a brighter red, to the arterial system leading to the patient's body. At length, the heartbeat slows to a stop, and the intricate repairs begin. Okay, this is fascinating. I'm fascinated. I know it has nothing to do with his biography, but obviously this is something he did every day, during, not every day, but like, probably like once a week during his time as an active surgeon. So the surgeons now wear glasses with powerful magnifiers built into the lenses. Using a very small scalpel, they begin to carefully probe the layer of fat around the heart to locate the arteries in question, which are scarcely distinguishable from the surrounding fatty tissue. Well, they're just indistinguishable for you. You're not a doctor. They know what they're looking for, They find one, and after a glance at an X-ray illuminated on the wall, the surgeon makes a small slit. Then a small catheter is inserted into the artery until it suddenly comes to a stop against an obstruction. Yeah, that's the fat that's built up inside the veins, yeah? After a light tap of the catheter, which I can almost feel in my own fingertips, the surgeon says, "That's it. There's just a very narrow opening for blood to pass through." A section of the pencil-sized vein that will serve as the graft is carefully measured and trimmed to the correct length. Then, with the utmost care and an amazing display of teamwork, the two surgeons begin to sew the graft onto the slit in the artery. The tiny curved needle passes from hand to hand, the hair-like thread is drawn snug, the knots are tied. After more than an hour of painstaking labor, 4 grafts have been connected to the aorta. Suddenly, the blood pressure drops, much to everyone's surprise. Making the diagnosis immediately, Dr. Nelson points to a clamp that should have been left on one of the many tubes at this critical point in the procedure. It is quickly replaced, a small mistake, but one that could have been costly. I'm going to pause there for a moment. Yeah, like, that's not a good thing. Don't forget to stop bleeding at all spots and not just some of them. Interesting. Anyway, there's a picture. This is a nice big picture. I will try to get it reasonably, large enough to look at, but it's actually a full page in the magazine. So if you want to look at that, it's actually really interesting. So this is Dr. Russell M. Nelson, yeah? So you can see him in his surgical outfit. Yeah, he's got a mask, like he's got a little, like, head thing. little hat. Anyway, I found that really interesting. So, let's keep going. I still love you, he says to the team member responsible for the oversight. There is a nod of appreciation, and Dr. Nelson adds in a wry tone, sometimes I love you more than other times. Okay, I know he's joking, but, like, I sincerely hope he doesn't really feel that way, but, like, you know, I'm just saying. Yeah, he's being silly, so let's just take it as him being silly. And there are smiling eyes all around. He is clearly the one in control of this operation. He keeps the atmosphere light enough so that all the team members remain relaxed. But there is also an unspoken demand for constant concentration. Well, yeah, he's a surgeon. Like, surgery, you have to be very concentrated. This is how an emergency has to be handled, says the anesthesiologist quietly aside. The surgeon in charge. Wherever he is, he has got to stay cool. He has to stay calm and think, let's find out what has to be done and then do it. Dr. Nelson later comments it is a matter of extreme self-discipline. Your natural reaction is, take me out, coach, I want to go home. But of course you can't. A life is totally dependent on the whole surgical team. So you've got to stay just as calm and relaxed, as sharp as you ever were. He recalls his days as an intern when he saw instances of undisciplined conduct in the operating room. Once, when he was helping amputate a gangrenous leg, the surgeon became so excited as he was cutting through the tissue loaded with deadly organisms, he slipped and jabbed the knife through Dr. Nelson's arm. Ow! Gosh, how do you become... I don't understand. Like, he's kind of, like, brushing it off by saying that he became so excited. I didn't like that too well, he says in obvious understatement. I resolved then and there that I would discipline my body to be subject to the dominion of my spirit. Interesting way of putting it. I'm not sure I would have said it that way, but... 4 hours have now elapsed and things are just about wrapped up. The heart-lung machine has been disengaged and the heart gently shocked into activity with electrodes. The grafts, now fairly bulging with new blood supply for the heart muscle, have been checked for leaks. The heart is doing well on its own and the patient is stable. Thoughts now turn to the patient's worried family, and one of the nurses reaches for a telephone. We're off the pump, we've done 4 grafts, and Dr. Nelson will be down in about 45 minutes. Nice. I guess, I don't know if he gets a break or if that's just how long it takes to wrap everything up. Yeah. Open heart operations like this are done more than 100,000 times each year in the United States. I'll bet that statistic has gone up over the years. In his more than 30 years as a pioneer in the field, he has seen the technology associated with open heart surgery and the expertise of surgeons advance to the point where less than 2 in 100 patients fail to leave the hospital. Yeah, but that's still a 2% failure rate. Like, that's still pretty high. Like, that's 2% chance of dying. Although, I mean, I don't know. For a bypass, is that, like, accurate? I'm going to look up some statistics. I don't want to look them up right now, but, like, I'll look them up in post, but I'm editing. And I'll leave some down here for the current statistics at the time of recording. This is February 2026. Alright, his own medical education began in 1942 during his second year at the University of Utah, and since that time he has developed a summary view of medicine that is remarkably simple. As a physician analyzes a patient's problem, he says, one crucial question needs an answer. Is the patient's condition one that will improve with the passage of time, or will it become worse? For example, a fractured rib will heal with only minimal care, but a deteriorating heart valve cannot heal, and with time will only worsen. The doctor's function is to convert the process from one that will not heal to one that will heal with the passage of time. In carrying out that function, he says, a physician or surgeon must realize that he has no healing power in himself to dispense. He can only depend on the divinely endowed and timelessly dependable healing powers of the human body. He quotes from the Doctrine and Covenants, there is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundations of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it is by obedience to that law upon which it is predicated. Doctrine and Covenants 1:30-20-21. In other words, he continues, whenever a blessing is received, it's because a law has been obeyed. And that means it will always work, not just most of the time, not just some of the time, but every single time, without exception. That takes the pressure off an individual who is willing to study the laws that govern the physical body and be obedient to them. Otherwise, we'd be crazy to take these patients down to death and back every day. It was while he was studying medicine at the University of Utah that he met his wife-to-be. He had been recruited for a role in a play. and when he arrived at the theater for the first rehearsal, he heard the soprano voice of a dark-haired young woman on the stage. He stopped suddenly and asked the director, "Who is that beautiful girl sitting up there?" "That's Dancel White. She's the one you'll be performing with," was the reply. He vividly remembers the feeling that came over him. I thought she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, and sensed that she was the one I would one day marry. That's cute, but like that requires that requires consent. So I don't know. How did she feel about it? Dancel felt the same way. Well, I'm glad, but still, just saying. When she went home to Perry, Utah, she announced to her parents that she had met the man she wanted to marry. 3 years later, they were married in the Salt Lake Temple. Having entered the university's medical school in 1944, Russell completed the 4-year course in 3 years, with continuing encouragement from his wife and his parents, Edna and Marion C. Nelson. Then followed an internship at the University of Minnesota hospitals, where, in addition to the normal surgical training, he began a program leading to a PhD degree. Okay, interesting. So he has a PhD? I didn't know that. Like, I knew that he had an MD. Yeah, medical doctor degree, but not a PhD. That's kind of a different thing. Doctor of Philosophy, yeah. He also became part of a team that received a 5-year research grant to develop a machine that would take over the functions of the patient's heart and lungs while the heart was being surgically repaired. Then, so I said, heart-lung bypass machine. The challenges were enormous, but after nearly 3 years of labor, it was ready for use. In 1951, it was used for the first time in an open heart operation on a human being. Yeah, but it was unsuccessful. Like, that person died. Yeah? Like, it was unsuccessful the first several times. So, it's interesting that they're saying it was used for the first time. Yeah, it was. On a person that eventually died. So, I'm just saying. I'm pretty sure they died on the operating table, too. So, I'm just saying, like, that it wasn't perfected then. It was the first time they were ready to try it. And it was with somebody who would have died if they hadn't done anything. Yeah? So, they were all high-risk patients anyway. Anyway, I'm sorry. It was very complicated. But it was something that I believe they had to request someone and say, hey, this is what we want to do, and do you consent to allowing us to try? Because we can't guarantee that you'll make it through this, but if we do nothing, then you definitely won't. Yeah, and that was kind of the point that they got with their heart patients until they were able to perfect it, and then said, we actually are now confident you may actually live through this. But that took a while to get to, yeah? After a 2-year interruption from medical service in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, interesting, and another year of service at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, he returned to the University of Minnesota and completed his PhD degree in 1954. Okay, so it was broken up a little bit. His studies were. Okay. With his long period of advanced surgical training behind him, he and Dancel returned to Salt Lake City with their family, which now included 4 daughters. Yeah. As the first 4 daughters, yeah. Marcia, Wendy, Gloria, and Brenda. With a 5th, Sylvia, soon to arrive. Yeah. Told you, he has a bunch of girls. As an assistant professor of surgery at the University of Utah College of Medicine, he continued in research, teaching, and surgery. Those first days of open heart surgery were, in his words, like sailing in an uncharted sea, with moments of euphoria, but with despair as well. When surgery was unable to save a life, Brother Nelson describes one such instance early in his career. In 1957, Brother and Sister H brought their 3rd child to me. He told this story like 15 times. Well, probably more than that, but this was a turning point in his life, yeah? Their 3rd child to me for repair of congenital heart disease. Their 1st child had died from congenital heart disease before the advent of cardiac surgery, and their 2nd also died after an unsuccessful open heart operation that I performed. I operated on that 3rd child, but she died later that night. Yeah. Like, they lost 3 children to the same congenital defect, yeah? That's so heartbreaking. My grief was beyond expression. When I went home, I'm gonna cry. I'm sorry. I'm tearing up right now. I'm a crier, so I apologize. I try not to when I'm reading these, but sometimes it comes. I told the story to Dancel and said, I'm through. I'll never do another heart operation as long as I live. And I wept most of the night. All I could think of were the faces of those 2 parents, and I could still see those pathetic children in my mind, blue-lipped with clubbed fingers, yet with the smiles of confidence and hope. I determined that my inadequacies would never be inflicted on another human being, a human family. When morning came, Dancel finally said, "Isn't it better to keep trying than to quit now and require others to go through the same grief of learning when you already know?" I listened to her counsel. I returned to the laboratory to work a little harder, learn a little more, and strive further. 25 years later, he has still not become hardened to the suffering of his patients. Nowadays, doctors have a very high rate of success in these operations, he says, but we can't save everyone. That would be impossible. Sometimes all we can do is offer comfort. We don't ever want to destroy hope. The doctor's job is to cure sometimes and to relieve suffering frequently, but always to comfort. That is so beautiful. You know, when you hear of like surgeons dealing with lots of death, it's a very fitting job for somebody who's kind of psychopathic, who doesn't really feel feelings. And so you always have to ask the question, somebody who sees a lot of death and suffering, are they psychopathic or not? However, it's obvious to me by stories like this and how important it is to him to comfort people and bring them hope. This person is not psychopathic. He feels very deeply. I mean, that's obvious to me, and I hope that it is to you as well. Quick picture right here. This is a picture of his family. In this recent photo, brother and sister Nelson are shown with 3 of their children and 6 of their grandchildren. And like I said, they had 9 daughters and 1 son, so a big family. In 1959, he left the University of Utah and went into private practice. There he was, 35 years old, in a family of 6 children at the time, in training all those years after medical school, going deeper and deeper into debt in order to properly train himself. Interesting. That is something I hadn't thought of until just now. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people go into debt for medical school, and most doctors come out of medical school with heaps of student loans, like ridiculous number. We're talking $250,000, $300,000 worth of student loan debt. Now, I'm sure his wasn't that high because of the time he lived. However, recall that after he got his MD, he went on to get his PhD. Yeah? And he was also pioneering research on a research grant, which I understand doesn't pay that much, in order to work on the heart-lung bypass machine. Yeah? And then he served in the army during the Korean War as a surgeon, and then came back from the war, and then finished his PhD. And we're talking probably 6 years to do his PhD post-medical school. That's just an estimate based on what it says here. And in that time, he hasn't been paying his student loans because he's still studying. And I'm sure that they were defaulted during his army days. It's just accruing interest. Yay. And not even including however many debts he had to continue to get in order to finish his PhD. Recalling that he also had 6 children by the time he was finished. Yeah? He also had to support his family. So he's not been paying his debts the entire time. And it's just been accruing. So when they're saying going deeper and deeper into debt, I 100% believe that. I'll bet he was 35 in his private practice with mountains of debt. I'm guessing today's equivalent of around 500,000. Yeah, that's just an estimate. It's a lot. All right. It's just a guess. I don't know how much he had. And it's just today's equivalent. I don't know how much that would have been in, what was that, 1959? So, his lack of concern for money is reflected in a humorous incident that occurred when he was called in 1964 to be the president of Bonneville Steak. Yes, I got the steak right. I love it when I'm right. Elders Spencer W. Kimball and LeGrand Richards were assigned the task of choosing a new stake president, and in an interview, Elder Kimball showed him a figure written on a piece of paper and asked him if that was all the tithing he had paid the previous year. Glancing at the paper, Brother Nelson said, "Yes, it's an honest tithing." "Well, I thought you were a little more prosperous than this figure might indicate." Oh gosh, yeah, he wasn't making much then. Ooh, said Elder Kimball. I didn't know how much I paid. He said, all I can say is it's a full tithing. He hadn't actually sit down and figured out, yeah. Yeah, I mean, how many of us do before the end of the year, you know? But great was his embarrassment when he went home and consulted his records. As it happened, that was the year they had moved from one ward to another within the stake. Consequently, the figure Elder Kimball had showed him was the amount he had paid for the 1 month they had lived in their new ward. Elder Kimball didn't have record of the tithing he had paid during the previous 11 months of the year. Okay, so it was exaggerated, like, too low. Yeah, 1 month out of the year, yeah, okay. I could see why Elder Kimball was so concerned. Like, this is all you made last year? And like, oh, no, that was the month, yeah. And he just knew that he had paid a full amount, and then he sat down and calculated it out. Yeah, okay, that's funny. Nevertheless, he was called to the demanding work of a stake president. Prior to his setting apart, Brother Nelson had mentioned that one of the serious challenges facing him as a surgeon was the difficulty of aortic valve replacement. In the blessing, Elder Kimball promised him that the quality of his work as a surgeon would increase so that he would have the time to serve as stake president without jeopardizing his patients. Nice. Elder Kimball himself was to benefit later from his blessing, for in 1972, the open heart operation that Dr. Nelson performed on him included aortic valve replacement. I didn't know that detail, but yeah, that I did know that he's operated on him. And it was semi like experimental at the time. There's a quote on Spencer W. Kimball's page where Dr. Nelson advised him to get the surgery, but he did warn him that he cannot guarantee that he will come out of it alive because he wasn't sure at that time. The statistics weren't very complete, and so he didn't have statistics on the, but like the ones that he'd done, some did, some didn't, he was like, I don't know, maybe 20% chance of living, maybe, but if you do nothing, you'll definitely die. That was the point people came to before they decided to do this very risky surgery, so. Crazy talk. Okay, in 1965, Dr. Nelson was presented with an extraordinary opportunity to assume the position of Professor of Surgery and Chairman of the Division of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery at another major university. Well, it doesn't say which means he turned it down, yeah? Included in the offer was a generous salary and an arrangement to pay fully for the college education of all of his children when the time came. Holy cow, he has 10 children, not to forget. Financially, he should definitely have taken it, but clearly he turned it down. So, the Nelsons were overwhelmed by this offer and were inclined to accept. But before making a decision that affected not only their family, but also his service as stake president, he sought the counsel of President David O. McKay, which apparently you could just do at the time. After hearing the details of the situation, President McKay closed his eyes, leaned back in his chair, and pondered the matter for some time. Then he said, Brother Nelson, it doesn't feel good to me. I don't think you should go to Chicago. That was it, said Dr. Nelson. We declined their gracious offer with many thanks, and here we stayed. Yep. In June 1971, Dr. Nelson received a phone call from President N. Eldon Tanner asking if he could come to his office. He went at once and found that President Harold B. Lee was also there. President Joseph Fielding Smith was not well that day. President Lee and President Tanner indicated that they would like him to serve as head of the Sunday school organization of the church. Yep, Sunday school general president. If it wouldn't take him away from his work as a surgeon. If it wouldn't... Oh my gosh, I thought that he did that full time. He did this as well as surgery? Okay, I am shocked. I had no idea that he was still working, I don't know full time, but he was still working as a surgeon. While he was Sunday school general president, I did not know that. When he had recovered from the shock, Dr. Nelson responded by saying that he would accept any call from the Lord, even if he had to leave his medical practice. But they insisted that they wanted him to accept the calling only if he could continue his work as a surgeon as well. Thus he entered upon more than 8 years of service as general president of the Sunday school. Yeah, crazy. I had no idea he was still actively performing surgery during that time. I honestly thought that he stopped in 1971 and that he tried to get back into it before he was called as to the Court of the 12. Because then he definitely stopped, yeah? All right, there's a picture real quick. Brother Nelson currently serves as the regional representative. Here he meets with stake leaders at Brigham Young University. Sure. Okay, moving on. That summer of 1971, he attended an area conference in Manchester, England. It was there that Elder Kimball first spoke to him of difficulties with his heart. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Subsequent tests showed a deteriorating aortic valve and a dangerous obstruction in one of his arteries. As Dr. Nelson explained it, the risks of an aortic valve replacement alone in a man aged 77 are high. The risks of a coronary graft operation alone in a man that age are high. To combine them would compound enormously the risk of either one. Surgery was therefore very risky, but on the other hand, the chances for spontaneous recovery without surgery were considered nil. Yeah, it would never happen. A special meeting with the First Presidency was called. A weary Elder Kimball, faced with these seemingly insurmountable problems, said, "I'm an old man, and I'm ready to die. It is well for a younger man to come to the quorum and do the work I can no longer do." Then President Lee rose and in a firm voice declared, "Spencer, you have been called. You are not to die. You are to do everything that you need to care for yourself and continue to live." Elder Kimball said, "Then I will have the operation performed." Yeah. I wasn't sure that they were going to include that story here. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Crazy. At that point, Dr. Nelson's heart sank, for the weight of responsibility then seemed to pass to his shoulders. However, on the eve of the operation, he received a blessing under the hands of President Lee and President Tanner to the effect that the operation would be performed without error and that he need not fear. The operation was performed on 12 April 1972. It was flawless. Mwah! Chef's kiss. Thousands of intricate manipulations performed without error, according to the blessing he had received. Even more special to Dr. Nelson was an overpowering feeling that came upon him at the conclusion of the operation. "The Spirit told me that I had just operated on a man who would become president of the church," he said. Yeah, I'll bet that was a crazy feeling. On another occasion, he and Dancel were combining 5 days of surgical meetings with a welcome vacation in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Shout out. Sorry, that's where I'm from. All right, during the third night, however, he was troubled by an uneasy feeling that would not go away. So he awakened Dancel and said, "Let's pack and go home." Oh, that's unusual. Within minutes, they were on their way to the airport. With no reservations, they nevertheless got seats on the next flight from Denver and arrived in Salt Lake City an hour later. From the airport, he called his secretary and said, "Who's looking for me?" "How did you know?" was the surprised reply. "You're needed at the hospital for Elder Paul H. Dunn." He was, oh gosh, I think he was he an assistant, I want to say? Assistant to the 12? I think so. Elder Dunn had experienced symptoms of a heart attack during the night, and an arteriogram indicated an almost complete obstruction of the coronary arteries. President Kimball arrived and gave Elder Dunn a blessing while the operating room was hurriedly prepared. Just as Dr. Nelson began operating, the heart attack came. Oof. Like at the same time? That's timing, you know? I mean, but honestly, if you're going to have a heart attack, what better place to have it than while you were having heart surgery, you know? Like, they could stop it, I'm thinking that they can. I didn't know Paul H. Dunn had heart problems. Interesting. Just as Dr. Nelson began operating, the heart attack came. Emergency procedures stabilized the circulation, and the surgery was successfully performed. Elder Dunn recovered and was able to resume his heavy responsibilities. Since his release from the general presidency of the Sunday School in October 1979, Brother Nelson has served as regional representative. He has a demanding surgical schedule, often with 2 open-heart operations a day. Really? That is demanding. Holy cow. Aren't most open-heart operations, don't they take like 7-8 hours? Well, I guess the bypass they were talking about took 4.5. But like, even if you did 2 of those a day, like you're working like 10-hour days. Yeah? And that's not even including like preparation time and cleanup after. I don't know how much of that he has to do himself, but like, you know what I'm saying? He's actively involved in professional associations and community fairs and still has children at home. Yeah, big family, yeah? With such heavy demands on his time, how does he manage to have a rewarding family life with only 24 hours in each day? That's a great question. I would love an answer to that question. Before giving Dr. Nelson a blessing on the eve of President Kimball's surgery, President Harold B. Lee asked Dancel how it felt to be the wife of a man who was so busy in his profession and in his church calling. She simply replied, "When he's home, he's home." Nice. I like that. He leaves everything at the office, yeah? And he tries not to think about it at home. The relationship between the Nelsons and their children had a particular quality that speaks of eternal ties. Brother Nelson marvels at the close natural affinity for the children that he has observed in Dancel over the years. He tells, for example, of the birth of their 7th daughter. After Lori was born, Dancel and I were waiting for the nurse to bring our newborn daughter to us. Dancel had been under anesthetic during delivery and had not yet seen the new baby. Suddenly she said, "I hear our baby crying." "You're kidding," I said. "You haven't even seen her yet." But she insisted, "That's our baby, I know her voice." So I left the room and walked down the corridor to the large cart that conveyed all the babies from the nursery to their mothers. There was only one baby crying. They all looked alike to me, so I checked the identification tag and found that the one crying was labeled Baby Girl Nelson, room 571. That was an inspiration to me. Dancel knew her child's voice even before she had even heard it. It reminded me of the Savior's statement that my sheep know my voice. I like that. That's a beautiful story. I love it. Aww. Another such experience occurred in connection with the birth of their son, Russell Jr. One night in 1957, Dancel awakened him to tell him of a very special experience. "It was more than just a dream," she said. "I saw a little baby boy. He had a round face and lots of hair. He looked just like you. I had a wonderful visit with him." Brother Nelson didn't pay a great deal of attention to this announcement at the time, even though their 6th child was on the way. Over the next 17 years, as that daughter, Emily, and 3 others, Lori, Rosalie, and Marjorie, arrived, she told him from time to time, "I saw him again. He's such a sweet and special little boy." Okay, so 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, they had... He was the youngest? I think the son was the youngest. Crazy. So he's like, "Well, we keep having daughters, so, you know." Then in 1972, he traveled to Sun Valley, Idaho to speak at a medical convention. In the middle of the night, he was awakened with a very real experience in which he learned that the child his wife was then expecting was to be a son, the one who had been appearing to Dancel over the years. When the child arrived, a hefty 12-pound boy, that is big, and the nurse brought the baby to Dancel for the first time, she explained, He's the one I've seen and known for all these years." That's sweet. Of this experience as a husband and father, Brother Nelson says that the greatest satisfaction of any of us can have is to know that we're doing what the Lord wants us to do. In that connection, he learned an interesting lesson. When on a rafting trip in the Grand Canyon, he and his daughter Gloria were thrown from the raft as it plunged over a large rapid. Okay, that's kind of a leap, but okay, I guess we're changing the subject. "It was a terrifying experience," he reflects, "but it taught me to cling to the iron rod. As we went over that rapid, I tried to cling to my daughter, fearful for her survival. But as we took more difficult rapids later, I learned to hang on to the ropes tightly and have my daughter hang on to me. The same principle applies in the gospel living. If a man will cling to the word of God and be obedient so that his family can rely on him, the whole family will be safe." Of his marriage to Dancel, Brother Nelson says, "It's clearly the single most important thing I've ever done. She has given me companionship, 10 beautiful children, and all those wonderful and tangible things a wife gives to a husband to help him strive for fulfillment and selflessness." That's sweet. He also describes her willingness to stick by him during the lean years when he was in medical training. He recalls that one night, as they were walking down a street in Boston, they pressed their noses against the window pane in a furniture store, and Dancel wistfully said, "Do you think we'll ever be able to afford a table and a lamp?" Oh, oh my goodness, that's so sad. A table and a... I sincerely hope they got some secondhand stuff, but like, come on, a table and a lamp? But they got by. The children didn't seem to know that it wasn't normal to sleep in sleeping bags on army cots. Oh my gosh, he says. That's really sad to me. Like, to not have some of the basic necessities like beds for all your children, like a table and a lamp. Yeah? I mean, clearly that was during the days he was studying, and they were in debt, yeah? Well, he was in debt, but still, they were in debt because he was the only breadwinner, yeah? Their one luxury at that time was a used piano, so that they might have music in their home, a special love of theirs. Dansel's particular musical talent is singing. Previous to their marriage, she had won a scholarship for the Juilliard School of Music. I didn't know that, an opportunity she exchanged for the privilege of marriage and children. Oh my gosh, so she was a really good singer. I mean, because I feel like I'm a decent singer, but like I'm not Juilliard level. That's crazy. Wow. Since 1967, however, she has been a member of the Tabernacle Choir. Oh, good. And Russell, after rebelling at the strictures of piano practice as a lad, resumed musical study in college and now plays the piano and organ. Yeah, same. In fact, Dansel reports that he once said he thought he would take up organ playing seriously because in the next world there would be no need for heart surgeons. Haha. I don't know, that's kind of a silly thing to say. Okay, moving on. Meanwhile, in this world, he is still busy. At age 57, he has received a multitude of awards for distinguished service, both in the medical profession and in public service. He has had the honor of serving as a director of the American Board of Thoracic Surgeons, and he has been president of the Utah Heart Association and the Utah State Medical Association, and the list goes on. But the one interest that overrides all other concerns is his determination to be obedient to the Lord in furthering the work of the kingdom of God. I like that. The Lord has a tremendous work yet to accomplish in the church, he insists. He's going to need every faithful soul. There won't be one prepared, qualified Latter-day Saint who won't have all the responsibility to shoulder that he or she could bear. Okay, there are so many wonderful people in countries that are not yet open to the gospel. I remember a regional representative seminar back in September 1978, in which President Kimball gave a wonderful talk on missionary work in various parts of the world, especially China. He told all of us there that nothing is too hard for the Lord, but that we must do our part to pray for the people of China, to start learning Mandarin, and to extend our own talents of whatever specialty we might have to the Chinese people. So I started praying that way, and Dansel and I began to study Mandarin. Wow, chapeau. Like, I'm not that ambitious. I do not know Mandarin. I do speak 3 languages, but one of them is not Mandarin, and I don't really want to learn it. No offense to the Mandarin people. Maybe someday, but not soon. I'd like to improve my French a little bit before that. One day I was in Boston for scientific meetings, and I started my day out with a prayer, like that in my hotel room. Then, during one of the meetings, I got restless for some reason, so I moved from the front of the hall and took a seat toward the rear. When an intermission was announced, I found myself sitting next to a Chinese fellow. I thought back on my prayer that morning, and so I introduced myself. He replied in beautiful English that he was Professor Wu of the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences in Peking. Nice. Well, they have a lot in common, yeah? We struck up a conversation, and before the day was over, I had invited him to come to Salt Lake City to give a lecture. He did, and he liked what he saw. And after he returned, I received an invitation to come to the People's Republic of China as a visiting professor of surgery. Cool! We went, and we'll be going again in the future. I love that. That's so cute. Then last August, the dean of their medical school, the head of the Department of Surgery, and 2 of their top heart surgeons came here and stayed with us for a month. Wow. They were able to meet President Kimball and several of the general authorities. We write to them frequently now, and one of their young men will be here as one of our trainees for 2 years beginning in 1983. Nice. Obedience to a request from the president of the church to pray for a people or to study a language is only one facet of Russell M. Nelson's obedience to the maxim, follow the prophet. He is baffled when he hears people ask questions like, is it really the will of the Lord that we do everything that President Kimball says? The Lord says, whether by mine own voice or by the voice of my servants, it is the same. He reminds us, my experience is that once you stop putting question marks behind the prophet's statements and put exclamation points instead and do it, the blessings just pour. I never asked myself, when does the prophet speak as a prophet and when does he not? My interest has been, how can I be more like him? That is beautiful. Now, since they didn't mention his calling to the Quorum of the 12, I think that this was written before he was called. So, I didn't realize that immediately, so let me look up a little bit. Just a few vital statistics on him. Okay, yes, it was before that. Okay, he was released from the Sunday school presidency in 1979, and as they said, he was a regional representative at the time of this article in 1982. And he was called to the Quorum of the 12, 7th of April, 1984. So yes, it was. It was before he was called to the Quorum of the 12, which I find very interesting. So let's take a look at the Wikipedia article, because obviously they missed a lot. Alright, let's take a look. Russell Marion Nelson Sr., recalling that his son is named Jr. Yeah, Russell Jr. September 9th, 1924 to September 27th, 2025. And I mentioned this in the video on Boyd K. Packer, but he and Elder Packer were only one day apart, because Elder Packer's birthday was September 10th, 1924. And President Nelson's was September 9th, 1924. So, and it's crazy to think about because President Packer died in 2015 and President Nelson died in 2025. Like, that's such a huge difference considering they were the same age. Anyway, just thought you might find that little bit of trivia very interesting. Alright, was an American religious leader and surgeon who was the 17th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, from 2018 until his death in 2025. Before becoming church president, Nelson was a member of the Quorum of the 12 for nearly 34 years, and was quorum president from 2015, after President Packer's death, to 2018. As church president, Nelson was recognized by the church as the prophet, seer, and revelator. A native of Salt Lake City, Nelson attended the University of Utah for his undergraduate and medical school education. He then did his medical residency and earned a PhD in the University of Minnesota, where he was a member of the research team of Clarence Dennis. Okay, I don't know what that means. And that in 1951 pioneered the first human open heart surgery using cardiopulmonary bypass. Yeah, we mentioned that. After serving the U.S. Army Medical Corps during the Korean War, Nelson returned to Salt Lake City and accepted a professorship at the University of Utah School of Medicine. He spent the next 29 years working in the field of cardiothoracic surgery. Nelson became a noted heart surgeon and served as president of the Society for Vascular Surgery and the Utah Medical Association. Yeah, we mentioned all of these things so far. Nelson served in a variety of lay LDS church leadership positions during his surgical career, beginning locally in Salt Lake City, and then as the church's Sunday School General President from 1971 to 1979. In 1984, Nelson and jurist Dallin H. Oakes were selected to fill 2 vacancies in the church's Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Living to the age of 101, Nelson was the oldest president in the church's history. Also the oldest apostle in the church's history. Yeah? Early life and education. Nelson was born on September 9th, 1924 in Holy Cross Hospital, Salt Lake City, Utah, to Floss Edna, née Anderson, and Marion Clabar Nelson. He had 2 sisters, Marjorie and Enid, and a brother, Robert. Nelson's father was a reporter for the Deseret News and later became general manager of Gilham Advertising, Utah's earliest advertising agency. Now, I didn't know that about them. They didn't mention that, yeah. His parents were not active in the Latter-day Saint faith while he was a youth, but they did send him to Sunday school, and he was baptized a member of the church at age 16. I didn't know that either. Do you know that? That's crazy. His parents weren't active? And then he becomes president of the church. Of course he does. I just think that's interesting. Wow. Nelson studied at LDS Business College in his mid-teens, concurrently with high school enrollment, and worked as an assistant secretary at a bank. He graduated from East High School at age 16 and enrolled at the University of Utah, where he was a member of the Beta Epsilon chapter of Sigma Chi and Owl and Key. I'm not familiar with Owl and Key, but I'm sure it means something. He graduated in 1945 with a bachelor's degree and Phi Beta Kappa membership. Sure. And then he attended the University of Utah School of Medicine, graduating with a Doctor of Medicine degree in 1947, ranked first in his class. He began his first year of medical school while still an undergraduate, and he completed the 4-year MD program in only 3 years, so good for him. So he's a studious young lad, yeah? After medical school, Nelson went to the University of Minnesota for his medical residency. He became a member of the research team of surgeon Clarence Dennis, developing the heart-lung machine that, in April 1951, supported the first human open-heart surgery using cardiopulmonary bypass. Nelson received a PhD from Minnesota in 1954 for his research contributions. Yep, all things we've mentioned so far. Medical career. Nelson served a 2-year term of duty in the U.S. Army Medical Corps during the Korean War and was stationed at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. While on duty, he was assigned a research group formed by the commandant, I think it is, of the graduate school at Walter Reed, Colonel William S. Stone, and led by Fiorindo, A. Simona. Is that, I believe that's Italian? Question mark? A professor of surgery at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, who had been a clinical investigator in the Mediterranean theater during World War II. Irrelevant. Moving on. This team was focused on ways to improve the treatment of the wounded and sent all 5 MASH units active in Korea, along with 2 major evacuation hospitals, several field station hospitals, a prisoner of war camp, and larger evacuation hospitals in Japan, Hawaii, and the mainland United States in order to implement such improvements. That was a very long sentence. At one point, the team came close enough to the front that they received fire from enemy artillery positions, which missed them. After 20 months of service, he left active duty at the rank of captain. Yeah, well, that wasn't really his ambition, yeah? It was, to become a colonel or something. He doesn't care. Following his military service, he did a year of work and surgical training at Massachusetts General Hospital. See, he's clearly not interested in the military. Good, come on. In 1955, Nelson returned to Salt Lake City and accepted a faculty position at the University of Utah School of Medicine. There, he built his own heart-lung bypass machine. Did he really? And used it to support the first open-heart surgery in the United States west of the Mississippi River. That is crazy. I guess he did help build it in the first place, but, that's crazy that he just straight up built his own. That operation was performed at the Salt Lake General Hospital, now University of Utah Hospital, on an adult with an arterial septal defect. Who died, did he not? I'm just saying, the heart-lung bypass just didn't work that well back then. Nelson was the 3rd surgeon in the United States to perform an open-heart operation successfully. Okay, congratulations, that is impressive. Nelson was also the director of the University of Utah Thoracic Surgery Residency Program. So the thing is, they just said, he's the 3rd surgeon in the United States to perform an open-heart operation successfully, which means that he had a lot of unsuccessful operations before this. Yeah, that must have been very, very hard on him. I'm just saying, that's really difficult to see so many patients die. In March 1956, he performed the first successful pediatric cardiac operation at the CLGH, that's Salt Lake General Hospital, yeah? A total repair of tetralogy of fallout. I don't know what that means. I'm not a doctor. In a 4-year-old girl. Tetralogy is 5, something with 5s. I don't know exactly what that means, though. He was at the forefront of I'm not going to look it up, I'm sorry. But this article's long enough, I'm not going to look up every detail. But that's interesting. He was at the forefront of surgeons focusing attention on coronary artery disease, and contributed to the advance of valvular, sorry. I thought I was going to say vascular, so I couldn't read the word. Valvular surgery as well. In 1960, he performed one of the first ever repairs of tricuspid valve regurgitation. Okay, his patient was a Latter-day Saint stake patriarch. Well, gooey for him. I don't know why that's important, I'm just saying. He also provided the first surgical intervention for tricuspid regurgitation, a disorder that allows blood to flow backwards into the right upper heart chamber. Yeah, I know what that means. Interesting that they specifically wanted to. I'm sorry, I feel like most people know what that means. Tricuspid regurgitation. So it's a tricuspid valve that regurgitates, which means it goes back up. Yeah? I mean, the same thing if you're regurgitating something out of your mouth, then, you're throwing up. So it's interesting that they, felt the need to, define this. Yeah, it's going backwards. It's going in the direction it shouldn't be going. That's what it means. Alright, in an indication of his surgical skill, in 1968, Case series of his aortic valve replacements demonstrated an exceptionally low perioperative mortality. Well, awesome. Later, he performed the same operation on future church president Spencer W. Kimball, replacing his damaged aortic valve. Yeah, they mentioned that. In 1985, Nelson, along with his colleague Conrad B. Jensen, performed a quadruple bypass surgery on the Chinese opera performer Feng Rongcheng. Okay, Irrelevant. Moving on. Nelson first operated out of the University of Utah's medical school. He later had a practice at the Salt Lake Clinic with admission privileges at LDS Hospital. In 1964, he set up his own private practice with him as the lead and Conrad Jensen as an associate. Okay, so they worked together a lot. Cool. In 1966, Nelson became head of thoracic residency program that combined resources from the University of Utah Medical School, LDS Hospital, Primary Children's Hospital, and the VA Hospital in Salt Lake City. In 1965, the University of Chicago offered Nelson the position as head of their Department of Thoracic Surgery. Dallin H. Oakes, then a law professor at Chicago and a fellow Latter-day Saint, actively worked to recruit Nelson. Really? Oh, that's interesting. That's the one that he was offered, like that to put all of his kids through college, yeah? However, after consulting with church president David O. McKay, Nelson turned down the offer. Okay. Interesting that Dallin H. Oakes was a law professor there, and he was like, no, let's try to get him. He's awesome. Yeah? Cool. He seriously considered it. They almost did, yeah? Nelson became involved with the administrative aspects of medicine and was elected president of the Utah State Medical Association. He was chair of the Division of Thoracic Surgery at LDS Hospital. In 1981, Nelson held appointments as a visiting professor of surgery at the National Institute of Cardiology in Mexico City and the Catholic University of Santiago, Chile. Okay, interesting. In May 1982, he was a visiting professor at the hospital. I'm sorry, I do not speak Spanish. I know I just was bragging about speaking 3 languages, but Spanish is not one of them, so Hospital de Clínicas in Montevideo, Uruguay. That's the best I could do. Roast me in the comments, I don't mind. It's fine. I never claimed to be good at Spanish. Alright, Nelson was honored nationally by being elected president for the Society for Vascular Surgery for the year 1975. He was also a director of the American Board of Thoracic Surgery. Nelson traveled extensively as a medical doctor and addressed conferences in many parts of Latin America and Africa, as well as in India and China. He performed a total of nearly 7,000 operations before his call to be an apostle. In 2015, the University of Utah, along with the American College of Cardiology, created the Russell M. Nelson, MD, PhD, visiting professorship in cardiothoracic surgery. Nice. They named their visiting professorship after him? That's interesting. That has to be an MD/PhD. Huh. Alright, moving on. LDS Church Service. In addition to his medical work, Nelson served frequently as a leader in the LDS Church. In Minnesota, he served as what was then known as Sunday School Superintendent in his local congregation. In Washington, D.C., he was counselor in the bishopric of the ward that Church Apostle Ezra Taft Benson regularly attended while serving as Secretary of Agriculture to Dwight David Eisenhower. Interesting. I didn't know that detail either. So he must have known Ezra Taft Benson. In Massachusetts, Nelson was the secretary for the Adult Aaronic Priesthood organization in his Boston area branch. Okay. That's basically quorum president, I understand. Like, it's similar anyway. After returning to Salt Lake City, he was called as priest quorum advisor in the Garden Park ward. Yeah, and that's not a big calling, okay? I'm just going to put that out there. Working with over 50 boys, aged 16 to 18. Okay, I take it back. With that big of a group, it is a big calling. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Perspective, I live in Europe. Like, our ward has, I think, 2 priests? I'm just saying. He next served as member of the Bonneville Stake YMMIA Superintendency, a position that is roughly equivalent to a modern counselor in the Stake Young Men's Presidency. Yeah, thank you. I know that. And then as a counselor in the bishopric of the Garden Park ward. Okay, he was set apart as counselor in the bishopric by Joseph Fielding Smith, whose son-in-law was the bishop. Okay, makes sense. Sort of, kind of, not really, but I mean a little bit of sense. Nelson served in that bishopric for over 5 years at a time when the ward had over 1,000 members. That is a big, big ward. Holy cow. He then moved to the Yale Second Ward, still in the Bonneville Stake, and was called as a member of the Stake High Council. He later served as a stake president in Salt Lake City from 1964 to 1971, with fellow future apostle Joseph B. Worthland serving as his second counselor. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? From 1955 to 1965, Nelson served as a missionary on Temple Square every Thursday afternoon for about 2 hours, giving tours to visitors. I didn't know that either. That's so cool. I guess they were like volunteer missionaries / working on Temple Square, because now it's an actual calling. Like, you can get called to Temple Square. I know somebody who was from our European ward. Yeah. This calling was extended by Richard L. Evans, an apostle and the lead figure over publicity efforts on Temple Square. Cool. Oh, okay, it was a calling extended. Okay, that's really interesting. For 10 years, every Thursday afternoon, he gave up 2 hours just to give people tours. Let's be practical, it's more like 4, because it's getting to and there, to and from, and, making sure you're dressed properly and everything. He can't show up in scrubs. So that's quite a calling, to be honest. For somebody who already has other callings, he was stake president at the time, or at least for part of that time. Nelson also served for 8 years as the church's Sunday school general president. Yeah, during his tenure, the Sunday school developed a unified 8-year cycle of covering the church's scriptures in its curriculum. There was also a shift from having members of the Sunday school general board to do all the training for the new teachers to providing materials, which developed into a book, Teaching No Greater Call. Read it. It's an interesting one. So it sounds like he was kind of influential in pushing that forward. Nelson later served for 4.5 years as a regional representative. For approximately half of this time, he was assigned to oversee the 14 student stakes at Brigham Young University. Okay, he then worked with stakes in the Kearns, Utah area for the rest of his tenure. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, sorry. Kearns? I don't know, something like that. Alright, apostle. Nelson was called as an apostle by church president Spencer W. Kimball. Shocking that he would feel warmly toward the man who saved his life on the operating table, whom he had served as a personal physician for many years. Yeah. Nelson was sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles on April 7th, 1984, during the church's general conference. He was ordained an apostle on April 12th, 1984, by Gordon B. Hinckley. At the same conference, Dallin H. Oakes was sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12. Nelson and Oakes filled the vacancies in the quorum created by the deaths of LeGrand Richards and Mark E. Peterson. Early in his service as an apostle, Nelson was an advisor to the church's Young Women organization and was supportive of the developing of the Young Women Values and Personal Progress program, which they no longer do, but it is like semi-based on that, what they do now, so it's loosely based on it, yeah? In 1991, Nelson served as the negotiator for the church with the Internal Revenue Service over whether contributions to support missionaries serving would be tax deductible. In 1992, I wonder what the conclusion was. It's interesting. In 1992, he served on the Strengthening Church Members Committee alongside fellow apostle James E. Faust. In 1993, he was the church's lead delegate to the Parliament on World Religions. This is fascinating. I'm loving this. For a time, he was also the church's representative to a U.S. State Department Committee on International Religious Freedom. This is absolutely fascinating. I'm loving this. Awesome. Nelson's assignment as an apostle included supervisory responsibility for the church in Africa. In 2009, he, along with his wife and others, were attacked while in Mozambique. Really? He also made several other visits to the continent, including one to Kenya in 2011. I didn't know that he was attacked. He was physically attacked. I'm guessing, obviously he was okay, but, wow, that's a little scary. From 2007 to 2015, Nelson was a member of the Church Board of Education, the governing body of the church educational system, and the chairman of its executive committee. He was succeeded as chairman of the executive committee by Oakes. Okay, cool. 2015. Okay, that's when he became president of the Quorum of the 12. Yeah. Following the death of Boyd K. Packer on July 3rd, 2015, Nelson became the most senior member of the Quorum of the 12 and the Quorum's president. Nelson was set apart as the Quorum president on July 15th, 2015 by Thomas S. Monson. Yeah, makes sense. Nelson made his first international trip as Quorum president to Central America in late August 2015. The following month, Nelson dedicated the renovated Aaronic priesthood restoration site in Pennsylvania, where church members believe the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthoods were restored. Okay. In 2016, as president of the Quorum of the 12, Nelson declared that the church's governing council had received a revelation from God requiring First Presidency approval before the baptism of minor children that lived with same-sex parents. Why? What did the kids do? It was our privilege as apostles to sustain what had been revealed to President Monson, Nelson said. Citing continuing revelation and a changing global context, this policy was adjusted in 2019 such that First Presidency approval was no longer required for the children to be baptized. Thank God. Because what the heck does that have to do with anything? I'm sorry. Okay, we're talking about the children of same-sex parents. Children of same-sex parents. Who cares what the parents are doing? If the children are coming to church, are obeying the rules, are living the gospel, is there not an article of faith that addresses this? We believe that man will be punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgression, including your own parents. Yes? I'm sorry, that would be extraordinarily hypocritical to say that minor children that living with same-sex parents would have to have first presidency approval before they were allowed to be baptized. That is a load of crap. A load of crap. Like, it absolutely infuriates me to think that that was even on the table, and I am so glad that that is no longer required, because if it were, I would be very upset about that. Okay. Eastern Europe. After Monson's call to the first presidency in 1985, Nelson was assigned as the apostle to oversee the work of the church in Eastern Europe. In this assignment, he worked closely with Dennis B. Neuenschwander and Hans B. Ringer. Nelson was involved in the first meetings between church leaders and government officials of Bulgaria, Romania, and the Soviet Union, and worked to continue expansion of the church and recognition efforts in Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Poland. Okay. In August 2010, Nelson journeyed to the dedication of the Kiev, Ukraine temple. I remember that. Yeah, afterwards in September, he traveled to church meetings in several European countries. He pronounced blessings upon Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo while visiting each of these countries. They served as addendums to Monson's 1985 dedication of Yugoslavia for the preaching of the gospel. Okay. Nelson's only son, Russell M. Nelson Jr., served as a missionary of the church in Russia. Really? In 2011, Russell Sr. returned to Russia to organize the first church stake in that country, headquartered in Moscow. That is beautiful. Mwah! Chef's kiss. I love that. Central Asia. In August 2003, Nelson became the first member of the Quorum of the 12 to visit Kazakhstan. Huh. While there, Nelson visited government officials, was interviewed by, I'm gonna butcher this one. I already apologized beforehand. Yuznaya Stalitsa. Yeah? Television, and dedicated that country for the preaching of the gospel. Apologies for the pronunciation. I do not speak Kazakh. Okay, obviously. China. When he was a Sunday school general president, Nelson attended a meeting where Kimball urged those present to learn Chinese. Nelson took up the challenge and developed elementary proficiency in Mandarin. Okay, so he's A2, alright? That's not that impressive, but it is still impressive that he took the initiative to do it, you know? He developed ties with the medical community in China and made several trips there to train surgeons. In 1985, Nelson was the first person to be made an honorary professor of Shandong Medical College. In 1995, Nelson went to Beijing along with Neil A. Maxwell and other church leaders on an official invitation of Li Langqing, the vice premier of China. Cool. I think that's awesome. LDS church president. With the death of Monson on January 2nd, 2018, Nelson became the anticipated successor to the church's presidency. Nelson signed 1,150 mission calls as the presiding apostle. That's really random. After being ordained and set apart as church president on January 14, 2018, Nelson was introduced to church members and the media 2 days later, along with Oakes and his first counselor, and Henry B. Eyring as second counselor. Nelson did not retain Dieter F. Uchtdorf, who had served as Monson's second counselor in the new first presidency. This marked the first time since 1985 that a new church president had not retained a previously serving counselor. I have noted that, and it's interesting. And I believe in 1985 it was Marion G. Romney, and that was because Marion G. Romney was not in good health. But Dieter F. Uchtdorf was. So it kind of was the first time in like the 20th century, since the 20th century, that the first presidency wasn't really held together. Kind of since Joseph Smith's time, when he kind of dropped some people, you know, over time. So it's interesting. Also, Brigham Young had a lot of counselors, so I guess they couldn't have kept them all. But I mean, and ditto with a couple other people as well. You know, like David O. McKay had a good handful of counselors, but like many of them were not in the Quorum of the 12. So I don't know. Anyway, moving on. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. But that's true. Dieter F. Uchtdorf, I was surprised that he wasn't retained. But a president has the right to choose his counselors. You don't have to keep the ones that you had before. And he had every right to choose somebody else. And so it's not as big a deal as people could make it out to be. I don't think Dieter F. Uchtdorf did anything wrong. like, not earn it or whatever. So, all right. On April 14th, 2022, Nelson surpassed Gordon B. Hinckley to become the oldest president in the church's history. On August 8th, 2022, Nelson became the church's oldest apostle ever, surpassing David B. Haight. Yeah, we talked about both of those before. Nelson turned 100 on September 9th, 2024. The church commemorated his birthday with a globally broadcast live stream showcasing his life and church service, which is why most people know at least a little bit about him. Worldwide ministry. As president, Nelson visited dozens of countries, addressing thousands of church members. I think thousands is putting it modestly. I would say hundreds of thousands, yeah? His first trip, called a Global Ministry Tour by the church, occurred in April 2018, when Nelson, along with his wife and Jeffrey L. Holland as his wife, met with Latter-day Saints in London, England, Jerusalem, Nairobi, Kenya, Harare, Zimbabwe, Bengaluru, India, Bangkok, Thailand, Hong Kong, and Laie, Hawaii. Okay. In June 2018, Nelson traveled to Alberta, Canada, where his second wife was born and raised, and gave 3 devotional addresses in 3 consecutive evenings. They haven't even mentioned his second wife yet. Come on. In September 2018, Nelson visited the Dominican Republic, where he gave an entire talk in Spanish, which was believed to be the first time a church president had given an extended talk in a formal setting in a language other than English. On the same trip, he visited Puerto Rico. Okay. I didn't know that he was that fluent in Spanish, but clearly he was. So, once again, chapeau. Like, he's done a lot of stuff that I'm impressed by. So, I mean, they made a big deal about him learning Mandarin, but it's clear to me that his Spanish is significantly better than his Mandarin. So, like, why didn't they make a bigger deal out of that? Did he grow up speaking Spanish? Because it didn't sound like he did. I think that's really fascinating. I wonder when he learned Spanish. I mean, in between all of his surgical residencies, you know what I mean? Like, when would you have had time to do it? Fascinating. Interesting. On February 10th, 2019, Nelson spoke to church members in Arizona at State Farm Stadium in Glendale. In addition to the large crowd in attendance, the devotional was broadcast across the state. That's interesting that they're mentioning that specifically, because it's a little overly specific, but okay. On March 9th, 2019, Nelson met with Pope Francis at the Vatican. The event marked the first time in history that a pope and a president of the church had met face-to-face. Really? The meeting took place the day before the church's Rome, Italy temple was dedicated. Okay. Well, of course it did, but, like, I didn't know that they'd never met with the pope. Why not? Interesting. In August 2019, Nelson visited Guatemala, Colombia, Ecuador, Argentina, and Brazil. Okay, organizational and policy changes. The first few months of Nelson's leadership of the church saw many significant changes to church policy, although many had at least been heavily discussed before he became church president, and some were continuations of policies instituted by his predecessors. Nelson began his presidency 2 days after his ordination with a short broadcast to church members before holding a press conference. The broadcast ahead of the press conference was unprecedented and provided the new leaders an opportunity to briefly address the entire church immediately. Yeah, I remember that. That was a little crazy too, yeah. In March 2018, the First Presidency issued a letter on preventing and responding to abuse, which I very much appreciated, yeah. This letter reiterated existing policies, but also explicitly stated that no one should ever be counseled against reporting abuse to legal authorities. The guidance also had a clear emphasis on using counseling to assist in healing from abuse. It also provided more clear policies mandating all interviews with women and youth be done with another person in the general area, and made it clear that youth and women could have a parent or other person or other adult present for an interview. It also adjusted previous policies forbidding adult males to teach classes of children or youth alone to apply to all adults. Yeah, it used to just be men, and now it's all adults, yeah. It's a church policy. During the church's April 2018 General Conference, Nelson appointed Asian American Garrett W. Gong and Brazilian Ulysses Soares to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, both of whom had been serving in the presidency at 70. I don't know why they specifically mentioned that, but okay. Nelson also introduced major changes in church organization during the April General Conference. First, the high priest group at the ward level were dissolved, making all Melchizedek priesthood holders in wards and branches part of the elders' quorum. A stake high priest quorum now consists of current members of stake presidencies, high councils, bishoprics, and functioning patriarchs. Next, Nelson ended home teaching and visiting teaching, replacing the programs with a focus on ministering, and shifting both the focus and methods of tracking them. As part of this change, young women ages 14 to 18 may be assigned as ministering sisters, similar to the long-standing policies of the young men ages 14 to 18 serving as home teachers. I think it's a little bit funny, just a little aside. It's just a typo in the article, is that the hyphen shouldn't be between the and long, it should be between long and standing. It should be long-standing, the long-standing policies, yeah? It's just funny to me that was incorrect. Anyway, just thought I'd point that out. That was funny. June 2018 began with a First Presidency-sponsored celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Revelation, extended priesthood, and temple blessings to all worthy members without regard to race, in which Nelson gave concluding remarks. A few days before this, Nelson and his counselors met with the national leaders of the NAACP. That same weekend, Nelson gave, that's the National something for the Advancement of Colored People Association? National Association for the Advancement of Colored People? I think that's what it's called. Yeah. Anyway, it's about equality among races. Yeah. That same weekend, Nelson gave a devotional to youth of the church in which he urged them to more fully commit to the church. He encouraged them to collectively choose a period of 7 days in which to abstain from the use of social media. I remember that. Yeah, it was a very funny one. On June 18th, the First Presidency created committees assigned to form a unified hymn book and children's songbook for the worldwide church membership, with each language edition having the same hymns and other songs in the same order, and that these committees would be taking submissions and collecting surveys until July 2019. It is anticipated that the process of creating the new unified hymn book and children's songbook will take several years. That is putting it mildly. They're still working on it. Okay. On June 29, 2018, the Come Follow Me program was announced, changing the format for study curriculum to be home-centered and church-supported. In August 2018, Nelson issued a statement urging the use of the church's full name. At the church's General Conference in October 2018, he reiterated his position, declaring, "It is a correction, and it is the command of the Lord." Nelson told members to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church as a major victory for Satan. Yeah, but it's still sometimes used for shortened purposes. I'm just saying. It is a really big mouthful to say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's really long. Yeah, but if you can say LDS something, I use it in my titles because it's too long without it. If I had written out the whole name of the church, you would have stopped reading at the church. Yeah. So, I want you to get to the rest of it, Anyways, I'm just saying, I'm not, getting super defensive. I'm just saying that there are times when an abbreviation makes sense, and it's not disrespectful necessarily. It's just for brevity's sake. All right. In October 2018 General Conference, Nelson announced the shortened length of Sunday church meetings to 2 hours from the previous standard of 3. At the end of the month, Nelson toured 5 South American countries, during which he met with Peru's president, Martin Vizcarra, and gave a major address in Peru in Spanish, and dedicated the Concepcion Chile Temple. I don't know if I pronounced that right, so once again, roast me in the comments. I don't mind. In December 2018, the First Presidency changed the process of youth class progression and priesthood ordination. Beginning in 2019, youth began moving between classes and priesthood quorums at the beginning of the year in which they turn 12, 14, or 16, rather than when their birthday occurs during the year. In April 2019, the First Presidency reversed a controversial November 2015 policy that classified same-sex couples as apostates and required parental and First Presidency approval before minor children of same-sex couples could be baptized or receive baby blessings. They included baby blessings in that? Okay, the babies did nothing, okay? Jeez. Nelson had previously characterized the 2015 policy as direction from God, stating that each of us during that sacred moment felt a spiritual confirmation. It was our privilege as apostles to sustain what had been revealed to President Monson. Well, just because you felt good about it at the time doesn't make it the right thing to do, yeah? Shortly after the change, Nelson said in a press release that the reversal was a revelation upon revelation, and intended to help affected families and reduce hate and contention so common today. I think what happened is that they put in the policy and then it completely backfired. That, people started becoming really hateful towards the same-sex couples in the ward. Yeah? Classified them as apostates? That's crazy to me. Why? There's no reason for it. They didn't do anything specifically, just because they're in a same-sex relationship. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that they did something really terrible. Like, you're just going kind of far on there. On April 5th, 2020, Nelson announced a new proclamation from the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12, the restoration of the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ, a bicentennial proclamation to the world. The proclamation coincided with the 200th anniversary of Joseph Smith's first vision, and is the 6th proclamation issued by the Church in its history. Yeah, but it's not really important now, is it? I'm sorry, but it's a reiteration of something that has already been revealed, so I don't really find that significant. All right. Temples. Nelson's tenure as church president saw an increased focus on worship in churches' temples. As of April 2025, Nelson had announced a total of 200 new temples to be built in many countries around the world. His travels included several temple dedications, most notably the Rome, Italy temple in March 2019, which was attended by all current members of the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Wow, I didn't know they were all there. Sheesh. In 2018, Nelson announced 19 new temples, 7 in April and 12 in October, among which were the first in India, Nicaragua, Russia, and Cambodia. That's awesome. During his April 2018 visit to India, Nelson stated to church members that the Lord had instructed him to announce the temple the night before the General Conference, though he had not originally planned to do so. Okay. I don't know why, but that's interesting. With the temple in Nicaragua, Nelson fulfilled an apostolic promise he had made to church members there 6 years earlier. Okay. In October 2018, Nelson continued a 10-day trip to South America by dedicating the Concepcion, Chile temple. Following the December 2018 dedication of the Barranquilla, Colombia temple by Dallin H. Oaks, Nelson presided over the 3-day dedicatory services for the Rome, Italy temple from March 10th to 12th, 2019. They've mentioned it like 4 times now. Can we move on from Rome, Italy? Nelson took all the church's apostles with him. They just said that. This was the first time all ordained apostles can be gathered outside the United States. Okay. While in Rome, the First Presidency Quorum of the 12 took the first apostolic group photo in 2 decades. Okay. In April 2020, Nelson announced plans to build a temple in Shanghai, China. Days later, the Shanghai Municipal Ethnic and Religious Affairs Bureau responded, saying it knew nothing about the American Mormon Church being a so-called temple in Shanghai. The Bureau added that the church's plans were wishful thinking, not based in reality. That's kind of funny. Okay. Personal life and death. While a student at the University of Utah, Nelson met and began dating fellow Utah student Dancel White, 1926 to 2005. They dated for 3 years, then married. See, I said 2003. I was relatively close. She died in 2005. They married on August 31st, 1945 in the Salt Lake Temple. Together they had 10 children. 9 daughters, Marcia, Wendy, Gloria, Brenda, Sylvia, Emily, Lori, Rosalie, and Marjorie, and a son, Russell Jr. Dancel White was a native of Perry, Utah, and first met Nelson when they were the co-leads in a musical production at the University of Utah. Yeah, he mentioned that. During the 1950s, Dancel was a member of the Tabernacle Choir. Also mentioned that. Dancel Nelson died unexpectedly at their home in Salt Lake City on February 12, 2005, at the age of 78. Yeah, he talked about it. The following year, Nelson married Wendy L. Watson, born 1950, in the Salt Lake Temple on April 6, 2006. See, the thing is, she was born 1950, he was born in 1924, so there's a 26-year age gap. But, once again, it's hard to find a partner when you're 85. I'm just saying. Watson, originally from Raymond, Alberta, was a professor of marriage and family therapy at BYU prior to her retirement in 2006. Her marriage to Nelson was her first. On September 26, 2025, the Salt Lake Tribune reported that earlier in September, during a state conference in northern Kentucky, Quorum of the 12 Apostles member Quentin L. Cook told members that Nelson had lost sight in both of his eyes. Yeah. I heard about that. Although I think that it happened way earlier than that, did it not? Nelson died at the age of 101 on September 27, 2025, at his home in Salt Lake City, Utah at 10:00 p.m. At the time of his death, he was with his wife, Wendy Nelson. Additionally, the counselors in the First Presidency, Dallin H. Oaks and Henry B. Eyring, visited him in his final days. All of his living children and their spouses were also present. I like that. So they were able to say goodbye. That's lovely. Before the funeral, a public viewing was held on October 6, 2025, at the conference center in Salt Lake City. The funeral took place the following day, October 7th, 2025, also at the conference center. Afterwards, he was buried at the Salt Lake City Cemetery next to his first wife, Dancel Nelson. Positions and awards. I don't think I'm going to go through these. I'll throw them up here on the screen if you want to look at them. I'm sure that most of them are really impressive, but I just don't feel like it's necessary after all the stuff we've already read. Honorary degrees and titles, ditto. I will put it up on the screen. I don't think it's necessary to look at. Let's look at publications. Selected works. Russell M. Nelson, 1979, From Heart to Heart, an autobiography. He wrote an autobiography. That's funny. Good job. 1987, Motherhood. 1988, The Power Within Us. 1993, Lessons from Mother Eve, a Mother's Day Message. Looks like he was very concentrated on women, which makes sense since he had 9 daughters, I guess. 1995, The Gateway We Call Death. 1998, The Magnificence of Man and Truth and More. 1998, Perfection Pending and Other Favorite Discourses. Okay. 2009, Hope in Our Hearts, The Hastings Center Report. Don't know what that means, but okay. 2010, Wise Men and Women Still Adore Him. 2015, Accomplishing the Impossible, What God Does, What We Can Do. I haven't even heard of half of these. Interesting. And then there's speeches. I'm not going to read these. I mean, he gave tons of speeches, so once again, I'll throw up the list on the screen, but like I'm not gonna be reading them. Anyway, see also Council on Disposition of Tithes, LDS Church Financial Leadership Council. Michael T. Ringwood, son-in-law of LDS Church General Authority. References. I don't read the notes, but I will read the references. President Russell M. Nelson, Leader Biographies, Official Biographies for Leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Press Release. LDS Church Newsroom. Okay. Henry P. Plank, McMurrin, Trudy McMurrin, editors. 1992, Medicine in the Beehive State. 1940 to 1990. Oh yeah, you couldn't leave him out of something like that. LDS Hospital, Deseret Foundation, University of Utah. Okay. Marvin K. Gardner, June 1984, Elder Russell M. Nelson, Applying Divine Laws. And Church News, LDS Church, July 17th, 1971. Church News, LDS Church, July 3rd, 1971. Russell M. Nelson, January 1st, 1979, From Heart to Heart, an Autobiography. Hardcover. Yeah. Cool. Okay. That's a lot of really great information, and it was a lot today. So I know this video is going to be like a bajillion years long. Yeah, hour and a half. So I apologize for the length, but I didn't feel like we could go through Russell M. Nelson at 101 years old without covering this much material. So thanks for bearing with me. If you got all the way to the end, you are definitely a real one. Leave an emoji in the comments, like I don't know, a surgical mask, because we're talking about Russell M. Nelson. And yeah, if you liked the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.